Love, a video reflection inspired by the work of Barbara Cartland. This video was created, directed, and presented by Reverend Dr. Dickie Jo Mullen, and in the video she explores the various dimensions and ideas that Barbara Cartland had contributed to the literature in regard to the concept of love.
Love, born romantic. The synonymous with the name Barbara Cartland in the hearts and minds of many of us. Who can resist the idea? Inescapable, wonderful, deceptive, unpredictable, maddening, ecstatic, love. It's a theme chosen by Barbara Cartland, whom the Guinness Book of World Records once listed as the best-selling author of all time. It's estimated that she has at least 400 million viewers the world over, or readers. Her books have been both numbers 1 and 2 on the Dalton list of bestsellers the same week. She claims in her 80s that she's written with less effort and more productively than she did during her 20s. The romantic novelist had a life as thrilling as any of that of her heroines. She was born in Hertfordshire, England, in a restored 13th century manor house, which was rebuilt by the grandfather of Beatrix Potter. The garden was the scene of the famous Peter Rabbit books that Beatrix wrote, and now it furnishes the title for the Camfield Novels of Love, one of a series of Barbara's books. The romance novels are kind of the shady ladies of the literary scene, and yet they shouldn't be really because, well, they may help people, and they're also the most popular of the genres. Barbara Cartland was born on Tuesday, July 9th of 1901, at the end of the Victorian era. During her formative years, the role of women was still defined by narrow home boundaries. Her transcendence of this was in itself unusual. The whole scope of her activities made her a living legend during her own time. At the age of 87, for example, she would write up to 30,000 words a day, and in January of 1988, she received the highest award for civilian achievement in France, the Vermeil Medal at the Vie de Paris. In 1984, at the Kennedy Airport in New York, she received America's Bishop Wright Industry Award for her development to the field of aviation through her writings. And in 1981 in Colorado, she was honored by the National Home Fashions League with her interior designs decorating for love. These are sold all over the United States. Barbara Cartland was deeply interested in health and was president of the British National Association for Health when vitamins were first being recognized and advocated as healing. Her books have been translated into at least 38 different languages, and the British government honored her with the title of Dame, the female equivalent of knighthood. She worked for established better salaries and working conditions for nurses and midwives, and in 1978 she sang an album of love songs backed by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. Besides her romantic novels, Barbara Cartland has written plays, biographies, and histories, as well as cookbooks. Her sun sign, the basic familiar birth sign everyone knows, born again on July 9th, 1901, was Cancer. This showed deep sensitivity to the needs of others and an emotional quality underlying her compulsion to contribute. In one interview, she was asked why she continued to write for hours each day. She was fabulously wealthy already and certainly didn't need the money, but she said again that she hoped her books would help people. Her attachment to her family, especially her mother, is typically very Cancerian. Barbara lamented her mother's early widowhood, preceded by struggles with her father's alcoholism. When Barbara published her first romantic novel at the age of 23, it became a prototype for all of her future work and created quite a sensation. It was translated into 5 languages and went through 6 editions in just a year. She credited her mother's pride and encouragement with motivating her career, and she continued to write at a time when it was considered strange for young women to show any ambition of that type. In Barbara's birth chart, the Sun conjoins Mercury in Cancer, and it describes her ability to channel emotional images into expressive words. Her passion for historical research was a background for her novels, and it can be traced to the Sun in Cancer. Now, she had her natal moon in the sign of Aries, and this is very spirited, very innovative, and very enthusiastic. Barbara would work for hours in a true Aries fashion to show that she could devise a new method for getting her stories onto paper. She dictated them to a stream of secretaries and through tape recorders, rather than writing them out in longhand. And in her biography, she would describe how she would close her eyes and an entire book would just come to her. She shared that with Charles Dickens, actually, another well-known British writer. And a sudden triggered response from a song, a color, or a landscape would give her a whole novel. This gift can be seen astrologically because her moon, which rules the deep subconscious mysteries of the mind, was in a grand fire trine with her natal Venus in Leo and her Uranus in Sagittarius. She has a T-square in her birth chart in cardinal signs with Cancer, Aries, and Capricorn placements, emptying toward Libra, the sign of love and romance. And the Libra influence shows Miss Cartland's creativity and also a focus on love and marriage and beauty and justice. These are all keywords that astrologers associate with Libra, which is the open end of her T-square. The energies of her beautifully aspected Venus in Leo, the sign of royalty, are evident in the emphasis on idealistic hero and heroine figures who move in upper echelon circles. In private life, Barbara nurtured close associations with royalty. Her daughter Rain married Earl Spencer in 1976 and became the stepmother of Lady Diana Spencer. When Barbara met Lord Randolph Churchill during the 1920s, he called her the prettiest girl he'd ever seen, and the admiration of the Churchill family was continued on by his son, Sir Winston, who actually wrote a preface for one of Barbara Cartland's early books. There's a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn in Barbara's chart, and it shows her capacity for hard work. She wrote well into her 80s and even up to her 90s. She passed away in the year 2000 and lived nearly a full century. And she commissioned and would write a book a month, and her publishers would say they could always rely that her books would arrive well bound. That was the days before electronic submissions, and a little bit early, perfectly typed and ready to go. The ability to age gracefully and live a productive life doing full-time employment long after her contemporaries were out to pasture shows in the strong Capricorn influences in her 6th house of health. She had a strong work ethic because there was a period of poverty during her childhood after her father died. Barbara's got a strong focus on the 9th house in the birth chart and a strong Jupiter. And this shows a lot about how foreign travel affected her. During her lifetime, she traveled to Tokyo, Jamaica, Bolivia, Greece, India, and Peru. And all of these sites figured into her novels. A spiritual and magical element always seemed to be a part of her unconscious memories of ghosts that she had felt near her since her childhood. Magical charms she received in South America, as well as attempts to communicate through trance mediums were very important in her thinking. Mars squares Neptune and Pluto and Gemini in her birth chart. She wrote poetry as well as some prose that had supernatural connections and ghostly elements in it. Barbara has a Mercury-Mars sextile from Cancer to Virgo. This is another strong aspect to look at in Miss Cartland's focus on health and wholesomeness. Her insistence that her previously lank hair started to curl during the 1950s when she began taking vitamins attracted a lot of attention at the time. We don't find an exact certainty with her birth time. However, from her appearance and the focus on her life, it's reasonable to assume she had either Leo or Libra rising. She claimed that she had 49 marriage proposals before marrying her first husband on April 23rd of 1927. She would have been just coming up on her 26th birthday. It's a lot of marriage proposals before her 26th birthday, but let's give her the benefit of the doubt and believe that. Also, she had a very strong emphasis on beauty, creativity, popularity. That would give her the Leo ascendant and place her Cancer planets in the 12th house. That would show the sorrows that she endured. She lost her father and both brothers, as well as her first husband during World Wars I and II. Her active inner life and imagination would suggest a strong 12th house here. Her favorite color was always pink, and she adored jewelry, traits which could show a Libra ascendant on the other hand, and that would make her T-square in cardinal signs angular. The passage of transiting Neptune, followed by Uranus through Sagittarius, brought a really high cycle in this author's life during the 1970s and 80s, and it activated her grand trine. The Sagittarius tie to animals came into play during this time, and she was known as an animal advocate person and very involved in that type of thinking. She wrote Love at the Helm, a novel inspired by the late Earl Mountbatten of Burma, and donated all the proceeds toward the Mountbatten Trust for Animals during the 1980s. Capricorn transits, as the year 2000 approached, showed that she was still at work and still working during a third Saturn return. Now, most astrologers will know that Saturn returns about every 30 years to its natal place. The second Saturn return usually marks the end in sight, horizon, in retirement years, and it's a rare person who works through the third Saturn return, which she did. Here's a slide showing Barbara Cartland's chart to look at for those of you who enjoy astrology, if you want to study it and think about the different life cycles that I expressed and spoke about and the aspects. It could be very helpful. This is astrologer Dickie Jo Mullen wishing you a bright, beautiful, and lovely future. That's what Barbara Cartland's writings were all about, the future, happy endings, and true love, something we all want to keep believing in.